Flager and Associates Personal Injury Hour here on WWDB Talk 860. It's kind of a historic broadcast. It's our first StreamYard broadcast. This broadcast will be available on Apple TV, Roku TV, Fire TV, via the NetStream app. We've got a great panel. First, I want to welcome in our host, Adam Flager. Adam, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. If the Phillies were not in a 2-0 hole, I'd feel even better.
Yeah, and by the way, I think we could all say that we just touch on that. We could go forever, and so literally speaking, but I'm right with you. And so I guess you can always look back to when the Boston Red Sox beat the Yankees 4 in a row. We have 3 in a row, so I guess anything's possible. And so great point, Adam. I'm right with you. Welcoming in our guest, Maria Bermudez. Maria, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I am doing absolutely wonderful because I'm in Philadelphia with you all wonderful people.
And it's great to have you in town. Certainly, you hail from Puerto Rico at this time. And so, but I know you're heavily involved back here in the States and in Philadelphia. So it's awesome to have you. And I want to welcome in Jack Sweeney. Jack, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful this afternoon, gentlemen and lady. Wonderful to see everyone. Thank you very much for having me. And also wanted to specifically good to see Maria again. We go way back. So it's nice to see her in Philly as well.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go around the horn a little bit, have everybody remind our listeners a little bit about yourselves and the practice. Adam, if you will, sir.
Sure. So again, it's Adam Flager from Flager and Associates. We are a full-service personal injury firm handling motor vehicle, slip and fall, premises cases, dangerous products, dog bites, you name it. We are on both sides of the river, so we handle cases in both Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Treat our clients like family, which is how they want to be treated, and get good results in the process.
Fantastic. Maria, if you will.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Maria Bermudez, and I service the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico areas with Social Security disability benefits and long-term disability benefits under private policies. I've been doing this work exclusively for the last 17 years, and I'm happy to answer questions today about what I do.
17 years, did you say?
I can't believe it.
Wait a minute. Since you were 3 years old.
Oh, you're after my heart, Joe.
The legal Doogie Howser, you know.
Jack, a little bit about yourself and the practice.
Sure, absolutely. So birth name, government name, John Sweeney. Nobody calls me that. Everyone calls me Jack, including my parents. Unless I was in trouble, and then it was John Michael. So that's my brief little anecdote regarding my nickname. But I am Trust and Estates Counsel here at Offit Kerman. We are also a full-service law firm. However, the only areas we do not handle are criminal defense and personal injury. So my particular area of practice, I do handle trust and estates work, estate administration, and some estate litigation. But I have a background previously in my previous life. My Doogie Howser years were spent doing Social Security disability. So I have a understanding of how the Social Security disability system works. But in the last, I would say since 2017, have been doing trust and estates work, including special needs trusts and working with folks who are both disabled as well as folks who have disabled children and folks who are receiving personal injury settlements. So the estate planning process is very, very imperative that, kind of folks from both the arenas, both Adam's arena and Maria's arena, it's an area where we can certainly help out a lot.
And so let's kind of start from a point of Adam as a personal injury attorney and firm. Obviously, you're dealing on a daily basis with individuals who get injured due to the negligence of another party. Okay, and however, this is sort of a natural transition. Talk about the approach. Okay, you're dealing with catastrophically injured individuals. You're looking at a lot of situations, and Social Security disability and wills and estates often goes hand in hand with some of your clients. Talk about, in a sense, a scenario, okay, where, and maybe one, that is a real life scenario where, you have dealt with individuals who not only needed your help, but you have a vast referral network and a network of individuals that you can also guide them to a service. Talk about this particular situation, a real life scenario.
Is that you wanted me to start with that?
Yep, please.
Okay, so we'll have clients who suffer more catastrophic injuries. So we're not talking about sprains and strains where you might need a little bit of physical therapy. We're not even talking about necessarily broken bones or herniations. Something where this person cannot go back to life as it was. Most of the time your injuries aren't that at that level. You can return to life, return to work after a certain amount of treatment. You might still have lingering issues, but this is when you have more catastrophic injuries and you can't go back to work. And now you're talking about someone that, in my case that I'm handling for that person, the third party case, you might have a major wage loss claim, because if you were, 40, 50, even 60 years old, and you were going to be working for 10, 20, or 30 more years, and now you can't, that's a major element of damage. But at the end of the day, they need some support. And then that may turn into, hey, you need to file for Social Security disability because you're not going to be able to work again. And then that's when you get that, you make that call and have that person go down that path as well. So they'll still have that personal injury claim. They're also potentially going to have that Social Security disability claim that they need filed, because they're not going back to normal and nothing close to it, really.
And so when you look at a situation like that, there's a lot of factors you're determining. And age would be one of them. Okay, having a situation where, and I know when we're going to bring in Maria in a minute, but what are the economics, Adam, when you are sitting down and looking at, a 30-year-old, okay, who's catastrophically injured, okay, as opposed to a 40, 50, and 60-year-old, when you're actually trying to, in a sense, what people don't understand is that there's economics here, and when you're talking about bringing in a settlement, there's all kinds of factors that factor in on that. Talk about that.
Yeah, sure. And for a lot of those, most of those, you're getting an economist. You're paying an expert economist, or sometimes a vocational expert if there's some work that they can do, but they can't do what they used to do. But you have an economist who's going through their tax records and employment records to figure out what was this person making, what trajectory were they on. And again, when you have someone who's 40s, young 50s, where they're really at like peak earning capacity, and then you're multiplying that out by 10 or 20 years, that economist can have a report with millions of dollars, again, depending on what that person makes, millions of dollars in economic damages right off the bat, not even talking about pain and suffering, just on the numbers alone of what that person could be missing. And whether it's, if that person's on the clock and they're getting workers' comp benefits, that's not covering everything. Social Security disability is not covering everything either. Those are good, kind of safety nets, so you have something. But then I'm going and trying to, with an expert, trying to put all of that together and you hope that there's sufficient insurance coverage to cover all that, because like I said, it could be 7 or 8 figures.
And the reason what I'm doing now is setting the table to bring in Maria and Jack. But the reason I say that is there's so many misnomers about, getting big settlement, like it's a big party, right? Like, in other words, getting the money. The fact is, there's economic damages here. There's a livelihood. There's a lifetime often of bills and value there that somebody's not going to be able to recognize because they can no longer work. So in a sense, when you talk about this, okay, it is, very important that obviously you're representing somebody, and like you said, an economic that can value the rest of their life, that can look at, what their loss is at work, okay? They're not be able to provide for their families or pay their bills, obviously medical damages and all those things. Okay, and so if the client is unlucky enough to be injured enough to where they may need Social Security disability, I'm going to bring in Maria Bermudez. Okay, and Maria, if you will, let's talk about that, because in your world, okay, there are different plateaus. If somebody's 30, 40, or 50 years old, it does impact it. Now, not if, and I say this, obviously it's not easy, but somebody's in a coma, it doesn't matter. But if they're catastrophically injured, but still may be able to do different careers, but they're construction worker, or say the person's a construction worker, but they may be able to be retrained in another field. Talk about that situation as it goes from somebody's age, because they may not be able to do the job that they got injured on, that Adam represented them, but now they come in your office. Talk about what you're looking at in this situation.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe, for that question. And what you're talking about is something that we refer to internally as the GRID, or the Medical Vocational Guidelines. So what happens is Social Security has an analysis, a 5-step evaluation process to decide if someone is disabled, if they meet the definition of disability. A lot of times people will come to me and they'll ask, do I qualify for disability benefits? Am I considered disabled? And we always give the most lawyer answer, it depends, because it's so specific to the individual, how old they are, what are their conditions, what are their treatment, what are the symptoms, what are the limitations, right? And so what you're referring to, Joe, is something that we've talked about many times before, is this 50 years old, this age where the rules change. So under 50, the presumption is you can find other work to do if you don't meet very specific criteria, right? So if you have, say Adam has a case, someone has a car accident or some sort of injury, and the person's 36 years old and they have a knee, they had to get surgery on their knee. They may even walk a little bit with a limp and they have a hard time. They have to go to physical therapy, pain management, they're getting injections. Does that mean that they are disabled? Most of the time in the Social Security world, the answer to that is no. Why? Because they may be able to do seated work. They don't have, we didn't say they had limitations with their hands. They don't have a significant vision impairment. So that means that they're likely to be able to, in the national economy, find work to do at the seated level or even the light level. So they would not be considered disabled. Now, that same person with a knee injury with the limp, maybe even using a cane, who is over 50 years old, if they're limited to seated work, and all they've ever done is construction work or something very exertionally demanding, now the tables have turned and it's a little bit different. The rules are a little bit more lenient once you hit 50 years old. So that is really the heart of what you're talking about. And those are what we call the medical vocational guidelines.
And so what is the difference between Social Security disability and SSI?
I am so glad you asked, because this is a great opportunity, once I answer this question, to pass the baton to Jack, who will discuss more about the Special Needs Trust with respect
Jack,
to...
I got your back there.
I appreciate that. I saw it.
I know we got people calling in. I don't want them going, you were in for 2 minutes for crying out.
I love it. So to kind of put it all together. So we have a case that came from Adam, right? Adam is dealing with the personal injury case, and he's on his way to settlement with the client, right? So anytime that I get a new case for Social Security Disability and or SSI, one of the questions that we're asking at the intake level is, do you have any other cases? Do you have any other litigation, workers' comp, personal injury, because it directly relates, right? And especially if it's an SSI case only, one of the first things we're saying is you need to tell your personal injury attorney that I'm filing a claim for SSI for you. Sometimes the case is coming from the personal injury attorney, so obviously they know, but we need to be in communication. One, to share resources, right? Medical records as needed, evaluations that they may have. But to your point, Joe, one of the most important reasons is because SSI is an income-based program. It's income and assets. So it's like a welfare benefit. You're only going to qualify for it if you have low income and assets. Think, the Department of Welfare, right? So someone who's getting food stamps, Medicaid is going to be likely qualifying for SSI versus SSD, which you develop work credits over the years and you are eligible for this insured benefit, tends to be a higher amount, and it's not based on income and assets. So you could have 3 houses and still qualify for SSD, whereas for SSI, you would not qualify if you had 3 houses, right? You can have the house that you live in, and that's it.
And so when you talk about, one of the things that we're going to talk about is, and Adam, so that you laid that out there nicely, Maria. You're talking about, say, somebody who may not have gainful employment. They may have an emotional disorder or some type of situation. They maybe never worked, okay, or maybe they work part-time, but not a lot, and they get hit by a car, okay, and that goes to Adam's office. He's handling that. At that point, obviously, they may be on SSI right before they get hit by the car, correct? Yeah. So now you have a situation where maybe it's $1 million, $500,000, $100,000 settlement, okay? And at that point, you can see now they're no longer low income, okay? That settlement jumps up. And
that's something that we've gotten much better at, because clients don't always tell you, as Maria and Jack can both say, clients don't necessarily tell you things, and it's not in a malicious way. They don't know that they need to tell you. And so we've gotten much better over the years of what benefits people get. Are you getting SSI? Because we know if they are, it's going to be a problem. And, we're not experts in that field, but we know enough to put them on the right path, and either someone like Jack or someone else that can help them with those issues, because the last thing they want is, great, I got all this money and now I lost these other benefits, which are also worth tens of thousands. Medical benefits are worth tens of thousands of dollars a year.
Exactly. And so the scenario lends itself to they need that legal advice, okay? Because they're obviously their SSI may be there may be issues there, and you need absolute professional help. That's where I step in and try to give them my financial advice and ask them to give me the money. But then Jack jumps right in and says, "Whoa! Don't listen to that guy." Where do we take it from there, Jack?
So I spend a appreciable amount of time with clients in situations like this, just trying to figure out what kind of benefits they receive. And Adam, as you mentioned, they oftentimes will neglect to tell you, not for any malicious reason, but just because they have no idea. Most people don't know they're receiving disability. I guess it's SSD. Well, no, it could very easily be SSI. And so, as Maria indicated, as we've discussed, the SSI program is a welfare program, right? It's a poverty program. It takes almost nothing to knock somebody out of contention for SSI benefits. And also with SSI, folks get Medicaid, at least here in Pennsylvania. And those benefits they receive from the Medicaid, the treatment they receive, I can't say it's invaluable, but it is worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. So what happens when you have perhaps a younger individual or somebody who hasn't worked, who doesn't qualify for SSD, gets hit by a car, has these catastrophic injuries, and all of a sudden, they're looking down the barrel of $1 million settlement. All right, just for the sake of ease. After $2,000, they no longer qualify for their SSI. Huge problem. So what we would do is we would step in, say, okay, Adam has sent me this case. I'm talking to his client, husband, and husband got hit by a car. Husband is going to be receiving all of these benefits and all this money. What can we do about that settlement? And what we do is we discuss special needs trusts. Okay, so there's two types of special needs trusts. Again, I don't want to confuse things too much. We're sticking to just somebody who is on SSI who needs to take a personal injury settlement and do something with it that will not jeopardize those benefits. So we are allowed to set up what is known as a first party special needs trust. And what it is a trust that's created by the client who's going to be receiving this $1 million. We draft the trust for them. It is a trust for their benefit, and they can take that $1 million, put it into this trust without jeopardizing those benefits, which is huge because as pretty much most, at least the attorneys know, if you just start giving money away or you spend it on the wrong things, the SSI folks, the Medicaid folks will say, okay, well, you just gave that $1 million away by purchasing XYZ, or you just gave cash away, whatever the case may be. We're going to take your benefits away from you for a specific period of time based on how much we say you gave away. What the first party special needs trust allows you to do is take that money, give it to your special needs trust without jeopardizing those benefits. Once that's set up, the trust will be there for your benefit for your special needs. And what that typically means is anything the government's not already paying for. Okay. And it can be, I get asked frequently, quality of life, expenses, clothing, televisions, computers, basically anything that the government's not already paying for, those Medicaid benefits and SSI is not already taken care of. You can use the special needs trust for those means. Now, the one downside to the first party special needs trust, the catch, if you will, sometimes we call them payback trusts because just like the name implies, the terms of the trust require by law that anything that exists in that trust when the grantor, or the person who sets the trust up passes, anything that's left, the state gets satisfied first. Okay, so you have to pay back whatever benefits have been paid, and to the extent that Medicaid lien does not, exceed those benefits, you can decide how that's going to be divided up, once that's done. But you have to pay the state agency back first. Okay, so that's the downside. But again, the benefit, what we have just done is we've taken $1 million that would knock you clear out of contention for SSI and Medicaid. We put it into a trust for your benefit where it's going to remain protected forever for as long as the money lasts.
So once you put it in that trust, your Medicaid and your SSI are protected?
Completely. Yes.
Here's a scenario, okay, and we have a family member where they've been on SSI because of an emotional and mental issues, which creates a real problem because they were constantly spending their money, okay, and part of the issue was not an injury, but it was obviously they've had issues since they were kids. So now you have a different. But here's a scary scenario, Jack, and Adam, for example, may get in a situation where he has a client, an SSD, an SSI client who gets hit by a car. Obviously, Maria takes it from there. It's not $1 million settlement, okay? It's just enough to knock them off, okay? So there's no silver lining there. They don't have, maybe it's a 5,000 or whatever. Talk about that. And Adam, starting really in your role, you just talked about, okay, the firm is a really experienced, reputable firm. You guys have dealt with this. Obviously, you're on, like you said, you guys are really up on that stuff now. You have somebody, you're aware of that situation, and you know how delicate the system can be. And it wasn't a $100,000, $200,000 or $1 million settlement. It was enough to cause an issue right away. Yeah. What is your conversation with that person, and then at that point sending them to Maria and then to Jack?
Sure. So they're for the smaller ones. There is a PA Able account, which is kind of like a that's run through the state. I think Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a $19,000 max contribution limit. So for those smaller amounts, that's a possibility. If your settlement, that net settlement is $19K or below, you could put that into a PA Able account, and it operates in a similar way, except, I guess the state's running it not run as maybe as well, but it can do a lot of the same work. And there's also a spend down where if you get the money, you try to give it to them in the beginning of the month, right? So it's already today's the 8th. So you've already lost 8 days, and they can spend down on certain things by the end of the month. And Jack could probably speak more intelligently about that, but those are options for some of those smaller ones, because they're made, for the larger settlements, yes, it's worth the expense to have someone like Jack, who's a professional who knows it in and out, to set up that special needs trust. Those smaller ones, there are options just that are there as well.
So, Jack, before you jump in, Jack, let's do this. We're going to take a quick break. This is flying by here. We're going to have more from the Flagrant Associates Personal Injury Hour in just a minute.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Shot Takers and the Tastemakers. Welcome to the Viewfinders, the Thrill Seekers, and the Night Owls. Welcome to everything you could possibly want on one 5-mile island. Welcome to the Wildwoods. Book your stay today.
Welcome back to the Flagrant Associates Personal Injury Hour here on WWDB Talk 860. We're live. This is a historic broadcast. First time we're doing it on our StreamYard. This broadcast will be available on Apple, Roku, and Fire TV via the NetStream. Our host is Adam Flagrant Associates. Our guest is Maria Bermudez and Jack Sweeney. Maria Premier Social Security Disability Attorney, Philadelphia region and across the land, of course. And Jack Sweeney, certainly a premier Wilson Estates attorney, also did some Social Security disability. So we got a well-rounded team here. I'll ask Maria and Jack, how important is it to have a network like this? Because I'm looking at everybody and I'm listening to this conversation, which is seamless. Okay. And Adam, I'll throw that in with you. But let me ask Maria first. Talk about the importance to have somebody like Jack and Adam, people that understand that the network that they have is as beneficial to your client as yourself and what you do.
It is the foundation of wellness and caring for someone who is dealing with either an injury in general, but especially a catastrophic injury. And the thing is that a lot of times these evaluations, I know at least with Adam, I'm not sure about Jack, if the initial consult is free or complimentary, but many times the initial evaluations are complementary. And so when you're dealing with a catastrophic injury or an injury in general, that's where your focus needs to be. So the foundation of facilitating that, if you're worried about money, economic insecurity has a direct impact on your wellness. So being able to hand over those anxieties to professionals and people who can steer you in the right direction is foundation of this process. And I think it's so important. And again, it's something that is readily available to people in the Philadelphia area and beyond. Many states have similar situations.
And Maria, your practice is national, right? It's almost in,
That's right.
So Social Security Disability is a federal program. And so, which is a great thing. Jack, talk about that. Obviously, personal injury and Social Security Disability are they're free consultations. How do you guys work it when it comes to these type of situations?
Yeah, typically for the lion's share of my clients, they all start with a consultation that's free. And for, again, as many as humanly possible for clients who are doing estate planning, whether it's special needs planning or just general estate planning, wills, trusts, et cetera, we try to build that on flat fee basis. All of the cases that I've had from Maria, they've all been flat fee cases. And so that's typically what we like to do with those kinds of things. It's a little bit easier to gauge how much work is involved. And it gives the client that peace of mind to say, listen, this is what it's going to cost. Here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's what I'm going to prepare. Here's the ultimate, return on investment, as it were. And here's your fee. And it's going to include everything that, that we're going to talk about, all meetings, execution meetings, et cetera, related to that estate plan. You're not going to get a bill from me for the time that we talked about, your trustees were going to be or anything like that. So that's how we try to do it as much as we possibly can.
And so, Adam, we talk about many times, the process when it comes to a personal injury. That's where all this starts. Okay, there are different types of situations. Okay, let's talk about a potential the process. Okay, of it's interesting. We're starting this conversation in the middle of somebody already having Social Security disability. Okay, and there's a process, and of course, when it comes to a personal injury case, those things don't happen overnight. And, insurance companies, no matter how simple it seems, you're T-boned at a light. The insurance companies, of course, they promote and they do everything that they can to get your premiums. Except when it comes to the little guy trying to file a claim, they're not just giving away money. There's ebbs and flows that go far and deep. Okay, so when it comes to Adam and Maria, same thing. When we talk about Social Security disability, because I've seen it up front, and I know as lawyers, you can do it yourself. You make a mistake, and it could be a year process. So it's so important to and the same way with navigating these types of situations. Adam, talk about the process of obviously the ebbs and flows. Just if you want a little, when it comes to a personal injury case, somebody comes in, they've been T-boned, and they're sitting there and they're going, "Wow, I just saw on TV, I'm going to settle in 2 weeks, or I'm going to, That's not the case. You want to set them up, obviously, for success, and to make sure that they're okay for the long haul and not their own worst enemy.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the most common questions we get asked is, how long is this going to take? So it's something that is very much on people's minds because it's unfamiliar to them and they don't know, does this take a month? Does this take a year? More or less, they don't know. Obviously, the biggest thing right off the bat is, what are your injuries and how long are you treating for them? Right? If you have someone that treats for a few months and then they're done, they get discharged, I can get the records, within a month or so of that, and I could send a demand out to the insurance company shortly thereafter. And so in that case, maybe you can get that wrapped up within 6 months of it happening. But there's other things that come into play, right? What's the liability? Is it a T-bone? Because if it's a T-bone, maybe you had the red light and I had the green, or vice versa, right? And so there could be a dispute as to who caused the accident. A little bit easier when we're talking about I'm stopped at a red light and someone rear ends me, right? Now I don't have to fight over liability. I just have to talk about what the damages are worth. But again, how long are you treating for and all of that? Sometimes the treatment can be very extensive. Yeah, I tried physical therapy, it didn't work. Now I had injections, worked a little bit. Maybe I need surgery. And so that treatment can last well over a year. And can I get that case settled without filing a lawsuit, or do we have to enter litigation? Once a lawsuit's filed, you get a new adjuster from the insurance company, you get an attorney, you have to go through a discovery process, you might have depositions. So doesn't mean you're necessarily going to court, but right off the bat can add more time to a case. So do I have a crystal ball? No. Would I like one? Yes. Joe, holiday present from you could be that if you're looking for something to get me. But that's, and I think when we're very upfront with our clients about here's all the different factors that go into the timeline, it sets their expectations so they're not expecting a check the next day. I think attorneys that promise, fast cash do a disservice not only to their clients, but all personal injury attorneys and personal injury victims, most important.
And by the way, that's a fantastic point. Maria, let's take a scenario in regards to where Adam's going. The person is injured, and we'll jump in with Jack. But it may not be a lifetime injury. Okay, let's talk about the process of what it takes to get Social Security disability. Okay, if they're on SSI already, they can't get. If they get the same, can they get Social Security disability?
Okay, so when someone files for Social Security disability, they're filing for both at the same time, or at least that's the goal. Sometimes that supplemental application doesn't get filed right away, but typically the primary benefit is Social Security disability benefits, which is the insured benefit. That's the worker's benefit. That's the primary benefit, and the better benefit, right? That's the one that you worked for. So what happens is people will apply for SSI in conjunction if they're low income for the Medicaid, to get Medicaid as well, because SSD comes with Medicare, SSI comes with Medicaid. So that's why they might apply for it. They also might apply for SSI because they're not eligible for SSD. Or their work history results in an SSD benefit that is lower than the SSI amount. So they need that supplemental benefit to get them up to $1,000 a month. So in terms of the process, you're going to be applying at the same time for, the benefits that you're eligible for, whether that be SSD, SSI, or both. Now, filing is simply an application, right? It's an application like you would have applied for anything else, food stamps, Medicaid, Social Security disability is a federal government benefit. So you can apply online, you can apply at a local Social Security office where you would get your Social Security card. You can even call your local office and set up a phone interview, or you can apply through an attorney who will then file online on your behalf. And so that's kind of what goes into the actual application itself. Now, like Adam said, one of the first questions that we get is, how long is this going to take? And it's such a difficult time period for these people when they have an injury and they had to stop working. And now they are so anxious. And we talked about, kind of like the wellness aspect and the anxieties and everything. I mean, imagine someone having children, or even if they don't have children or family and they're just single, but they're the person that, takes care of themselves, and then now they can't work. They're worried about how are they going to pay their bills in our country. Unfortunately, most people are paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people don't have savings. They might not even have any retirement or other, funds or accounts to pull money from to get them through the next 6 months or year or longer. So it is an extremely difficult and challenging time for these people. So, the answer to that question for an initial application, at least in the Pennsylvania area, is around 9 months for their application to get processed. So then the natural question is, well, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And that's on a good day, it's 9 months. And that's assuming they get approved.
Well, that's why I say to make sure you get an attorney to do it, because it takes 9 months just, when you do it right. And I saw somebody make one mistake on it, and they sent it back, and all of a sudden the clock restarted. And so, but one of the things before we go to Jack is, when it comes to Social Security disability, you get an injured worker or an injury, somebody who got a personal injury from Adam. Okay, what's the minimum amount of time they need to be out of work for them to be able to apply for Social Security disability? Because I know it doesn't have to be the rest of their life.
Okay, right. So the minimum amount of time is 12 months. So 1 year. You either have to be out of work 1 year or likely to be out of work for 1 year. So that goes straight and directly into the application time period. So typically we recommend as attorneys that people wait until they're out of work about 6 months before they file for disability benefits to avoid what we call a technical denial. Because what happens is if you stop working in June and July, you file for disability benefits and you're not either out of work or likely to be out of work for 12 months, sometimes Social Security will deny it fairly quickly and say, there's not evidence here that, you're likely to be out of work for 12 months. You still could be in physical therapy. You still could be doing pain management. Maybe you have a surgery scheduled for next month and you could be doing great within 4 months. So for that reason, we typically tell people, it's a consensus amongst practitioners, right around month 6 is when we file, and you have to either be out of work or likely to be out of work for 12 months.
Okay, and if they get denied, which a lot of people do, okay, there is an appeal process, correct?
Yes, there's 5 levels. So at a minimum, right? So there is the initial application that you file that gets denied. You can file an appeal, which we call a reconsideration. If that gets denied, you can go to a hearing with an administrative law judge. If that gets denied, there's an appeals council, which is a council of judges. If that gets denied, then we file a complaint in federal court against the Social Security Administration.
Okay, so now you're going through that process, okay? And Adam, at this point, because it sounds like Adam's case could actually settle before the Social Security situation. Would that be unusual?
No, I mean, because of the nature of the timing with Social Security claims, that could very well happen where it's settled, whereas workers' comp, a lot of times comp settles first and then the personal injury case. With disability, because it could, by design, I guess, they've made it so it's so much harder and has all these steps. It's very likely that I could settle before that case is ever adjudicated.
That's incredible, to be honest with you. Jack, at this point, okay, the people come into your office and you're dealing with, let's talk a wide array of scenarios, but Social Security disability settlements as well. So if they get a large sum from Social Security, at this point, it's back pay. You may be handling that, but also at this point, what if in a Social Security disability, they don't even have SSI, but they settle their case, okay, before they even get a determination from SSD? Talk about that scenario? I'm sure it's come upon it. What's the situation there?
So I just wanted to briefly say thank you to both Adam and Maria, because I'm able to breathe the sigh of relief. You guys call me when all of that's done.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
I say that in jest, just because I did disability for enough years, and the hardest phone calls to have with your clients are, when is this gonna all end? And frankly, there's no guarantee that they're gonna win. So just based on your your scenario where they have won their case or there's been a settlement, then yes, they give me a call and I'm able to diagnose what type of estate plan they're going to need moving forward. With SSD, we have a little bit more leeway because, as we've already discussed, it's not means tested. But So whether they have a settlement or whether that's still currently, the SSD claims in the pipeline, perhaps they've received their personal injury settlement. Those would be opportune times to give me a call, because again, even with something that's coming down the road, whether it's been settled or not, I'm typically able to, diagnose their scenario, their situation, and tell them, recommend and advise them on what kind of estate plan they're going to need moving forward for themselves and their family.
Jack, your experience in SSD and understanding, I was just going to say before you mentioned, obviously, the pressure cookers is over by the time, because you're advising them on settlements,
Sure.
which is fantastic. When they get to walk in Jack's office, it's always a good thing. However, talk about your experience in Social Security disability and how that comes into play in assisting and understanding the rules of SSI and SSD, so you can lead them in the right direction. Because Adam, you and I have talked about dabblers in the personal injury case, and how, especially when it's a dynamic of workers' comp and personal injury, where the left hand has to know what the right hand's doing, okay, or a settlement can be screwed up. I'm sure in your world, Jack, the client needs to be talking to, and if Maria Bermudez sent that client to your office, obviously but talk about how your experience in Social Security disability and understanding the needs, okay, and the rules benefits your client.
Sure. So just say a client walks in off the street and it's not a referral from Adam or from Maria. And we have that happen pretty frequently here, where, somebody will come in and they'll say, I'm receiving disability benefits, or what's more typical for us is a beneficiary is disabled. That's huge. That happens quite a bit. And again, an appreciable amount of my time spent kind of tracking people down, trying to figure out what benefits they are receiving, because it directly implicates the type of planning I'm doing for, John Smith comes into my office and says, maybe I'm fine. Maybe, John Smith is fine. But I have 3 children, 2 are, able-bodied, et cetera, but I have 1 child who, has Down syndrome, or whatever the case may be. And even if they're not receiving benefits, we're still able to step in and say, listen, here's what we need to plan for down the road. And it's going to require special needs planning. It's going to require understanding of what kind of benefits they may receive at some point. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but there's also what's known as disabled adult child benefits, where you're disabled between the ages of 18 and 22. You can then receive your parents' disability benefit, right? So you can get their SSD and their Medicare, and perhaps be dually eligible for Medicaid as well, based on your parents' work record. Okay. So again, those things all come into play when we are trying to diagnose and analyze when a client walks in. But it's definitely something that comes up pretty frequently. And it's something that having the background that I have is very helpful for me, and very helpful for our clients moving forward, because we're able to properly advise them on what kind of planning is necessary, either for them or for their families. And
well said, Jack. And we're winding down, but I would like to ask Adam and then go around the horn. Adam, you can read the situation, obviously. There's a guy who lives up the street. I live 2 doors down from the house I grew up in, okay? And we briefly got married, moved away. 20 years later, we come back, right? 2 doors down from the house. There's a guy who lives up the street, okay? And I remember his parents. Now, I'm from this neighborhood, and I've never had a conversation on my street, because you can see, obviously, he's disabled or on the spectrum. It does bleed my heart a little bit, because his parents wanted to do something, okay, to make sure that the rest of his life is protected, okay? Because now he's alone, okay? And I look at this panel of attorneys right here, and it does touch my heart, because, and I'm going to Adam first, because the importance of surrounding yourself with a network of people. When you send somebody to Maria Bermudez and you to Jack Sweeney, okay, it would be great if it was just going to be that year, Maria. You know, where they got a busted up knee, they'll be back in a year, and they get, you know, and then you go, you know, but sometimes it's for the rest of their life. Talk about that type of, starting with you, Adam, the importance of having somebody like Maria and knowing that you're taking this client who may never work again. When we're talking about Social Security, they may never have worked. So this is a car accident with somebody who was already disabled, maybe mentally. And you're putting them in the care of Maria, and you know the rest of their life has to be taken care of. Talk about the importance of having a network that works like that.
Yeah, well, I think this show is proven that you can't do any of these things on your own, right? Whether it's a personal injury case with me, SSD with Maria, or we're setting up a trust with Jack, you need people that know the ins and outs, because there are, we can talk about the big picture stuff. You need people that know all these little details. Oh, you have this issue. Now we need to do something a little bit different. That's so critical, right? I need to know what I do for my area of the law, but I need to have other people that know their area just as well, if not better, right? So that's where that network comes in, where there are so many details. Do I know some about the special needs stuff? Yeah. Do I know some about Social Security disability? Yes. Do I know enough to competently advise clients the way Maria and Jack do? No. And so I have to know what I don't know, and then give them, give my clients the right people to take them to the next step, because those are the types of things when you're talking about catastrophic injuries, the need for SSD and the special needs trust. It's so critical, and making a mistake can cost you so much money that you can't afford to lose.
And Maria, we only have a couple minutes. Well said, Adam. Right, and talk about that, and also sending them to somebody like Jack, the importance, that you know that the rest of their life is, and he's going to do right by them.
Yeah, it's important for the clients, and even more so, it's important for us as practitioners to have these relationships and maintain these long-term relationships. My relationship with Jack is invaluable, and we've been friends for many years, and it is invaluable as a practitioner to have someone like him that I can ask a question to, shoot a text to. Same with someone like Adam that I can, ask, okay, is this appropriate in this situation, or just asking questions. So as practitioners, it's important, and it's part of our job to have this network of connections. So people think of lawyers, they think of your education and what you do on a day-to-day basis, but our relationships are equally as important for all the reasons that we've just mentioned.
Jack, got about 30 seconds, but jump on that if you will.
Just everything everybody just said, absolutely correct. Invaluable relationships to have. I still get texts from old attorneys that I've worked with in the past, all the time, and asking questions about estate planning they don't know, and vice versa. So really invaluable, and really good to know that your attorneys have their attorneys.
And Jack, contact information, somebody wants to get in touch.
Yes, the firm is Offit Kerman. The email address is john.sweeney, SWEENEY, at one word, Offit Kerman, OFFITKURMAN.com.
And Maria, if you will, contact information.
Website is disabilityadvocacygroup.com, and I'm on YouTube at Disability Advocacy Group.
Adam Flager, take us home, please, sir.
215-953-5200, flagerlaw.com, on Instagram, TikTok, Flager Law, Flager & Associates.
All right, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Flager & Associates Personal Injury Hour here on WWT Talk 860. I want to thank our host, Adam Flager, for making it happen. Our guest, Maria Bermudez, and Jack Sweeney. Fantastic broadcast. What a lot of great information. On behalf of everybody on the show, I'm Joe Doherty. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.